Welcome to meeting number 3 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration. Today's meeting is taking place in hybrid format. I want to remind all participants of the following points. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. All comments should be addressed through the chair. Members, please raise your hand if you wish to speak, whether participating in person or via Zoom. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best as we can. I want to thank you all in advance for your cooperation. Pursuant to Standing Order 108-2 and the motion adopted by the committee on September 16, 2025, the committee is commencing its study of the International Student Program and study permits. I would now like to welcome our witnesses for today's meeting. From the Department of Citizenship and Immigration, we have 4 guests. We have Pemi Gill, Assistant Deputy Minister, Service Delivery. We have Soo Young Park, Assistant Deputy Minister, Economic Programs. We have Aisha Zafar, Assistant Deputy Minister, Migration Integrity. We have Bronwyn May, Director General, International Students Branch. Up to 5 minutes will be given for opening remarks, after which we will proceed with rounds of questions. And so I would like to welcome Ms. Gill. I now invite you to make an opening statement of up to 5 minutes. Unless, I'll just pause for a second. Is there an order that you would prefer? Would you prefer us to go from Ms. May to Ms. Park to Ms. Gill to Ms. Zafar? How would you like to go?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be providing the opening remarks. And,
well, then we will ask Ms. Park to start off. Thank you.
Point of order. So it's 5 minutes for all of them?
5 minutes for each one.
I don't think that's Alexi.
Oh, sorry, 5 minutes. 5 minutes for one. Sorry. For
total.
Yes, total. Thank you. I was so excited to hear from all of you that I had thought maybe I could slip that in, but we will do 5 minutes as opening remarks. So we'll do that. So thank you, Ms. Park.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional unceded territories of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people.
International students make important contributions to our communities, campuses, and economy. However, the program faced unprecedented growth during 2022 and 2023, bringing new challenges and the need for reform. That is why the department has implemented a comprehensive set of reforms to the International Student Program.
Mandatory verification of acceptance letters for all student study permit applications to detect and prevent fraud. This means that applications are not approved without a verified letter of acceptance from a designated learning institution. We also raised financial requirements to better reflect the cost of living in Canada with yearly adjustments, so students are more financially prepared to live in Canada during the period of their studies. Pour répondre à un volume...
We implemented the annual cap on study permits and introduced an allocation system with provinces and the territories to meet the high level of demand. Provinces and territories allocate spaces to learning institutions based on community capacity and housing availability, among other factors.
CAP was introduced in 2024. There has been a 21% reduction in study permit holders in Canada. The cap is working because compared to the same period last year, Canada welcomed over 98,000 fewer international students to better align with Canada's economic needs. Initial reports suggest pressure on housing and local services are beginning to ease in communities with universities and colleges. We also tightened requirements for the postgraduate work permit program, also called the PGWP, to bring greater focus on Canada's labour market needs and introduce minimum language requirements. In November 2024, we introduced additional program integrity measures. 1, we set new 24-hour weekly limit for off-campus work. 2, students who change learning institutions must apply for a new study permit so we can better track where they are and the fact that they are studying. And lastly, we now have additional regulations to enforce compliance and reporting standards on learning institutions. Ces réformes renforcent l'intégrité et
These reforms strengthen integrity and respond to the concerns of Canadians around the capacity of communities and institutions to support international students.
and will continue to work closely with provinces, territories, and the education sector to build a stronger and a sustainable program that will continue to welcome genuine students while preventing misuse of the program. Je vous remercie et serai heureuse de...
Thank you for your attention. I'll be very happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks, Ms. Park. Now we're going to begin with the first round of questions. And I didn't notice that Mr. Paul-Hughes is here and Mr. Davies. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for being here with us. I believe that the first questioner will be Mr. Redcott. Please, 5 minutes. 6 minutes, sorry.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. My first question is to Ms. May, and that is, what advice did you provide the Minister on study permits regarding the impact on housing and asylum claims and employment and food bank usage, things like that?
So if I understood correctly, you wanted to know what advice we had provided in advance of the reforms to inform.
I'm thinking you have a new minister, and did you provide, the department provide advice to them regarding the impact on study permits on things like housing, asylum claims, et cetera?
I think as I mentioned during my opening remarks, a lot of the reform measures were introduced in 2024, and therefore we're at the stage right now where we're really starting to see some of the early results of those reforms. So one of the objectives of the reforms...
Sorry, that's not exactly what I was looking for, but let's go a different direction. I do have some questions related to the department's understanding of the situation on the ground in Canada and how that impacts recommendations that are made to the minister. So regarding study permit holders and postgraduate work permit holders, what was the IRCC forecast for the number of asylum inflows attributable to study permit holders and postgraduate work permit holders?
So in terms of the impact to asylum claims, I'm happy to report that this year alone, overall, the asylum overall asylum intake has actually dropped by over 30%. And in that, in terms of the student numbers, there's been a corresponding decrease as well, at least until the end of July 2025.
So does the department track the number of study permit holders and postgraduate work permit holders that claim asylum?
We would be able to track the permit or the status that they held prior to the time that they claimed asylum.
Okay, could you table that information with the committee? The number of study permit holders or postgraduate work permit holders that claim asylum by, let's say, by year? For the last,
by year?
By year,
yeah,
for the last 2
I
years.
believe that information is, this is the precise data. So there were actually 40% less asylum claims made by students in July 2025.
I'm looking for a number, though.
Yeah, I'm giving the number of 1,586 compared to December 2024, 2,640.
Okay, so of all study permits expiring in each month since January 1st, 2024, what percentage of former holders filed asylum claims?
Well, the statistics that I just provided you would be study permit holders who claimed asylum.
Okay, let's try this. What are the top 10 nationalities among former students or PGWP holders now claiming asylum, and what primary grounds are being cited?
I wouldn't have, we would be able to provide to you the nationality In terms of the claim type or the grounds of claim, that would be available through the Immigration Refugee Board.
Did you say you would not be able to provide the nationality?
We would be able to.
Okay, so can you please do that? You can submit that to us after the fact,
Okay.
but that would be good information. Since January 2024, how many removal orders have been issued to former students or PGWP holders making asylum claims? And how many were stayed due to active claims or appeals by month?
That would be under the mandate of the CBSA, but I'm not sure if you want.
Yeah, as my colleague mentioned, that would numbers of removals specific to study permits would be under CBSA's purview. However, I understand that they did affect overall 18,000 removals in 2024. I don't have the percentage of what were students.
So the department doesn't know how many removals were from student study permit holders. Is that what you're saying?
IRCC does not track that data, as it's the mandate of the Canada Border Services Agency.
How many work-eligible asylum claimants who are former students or PGWP holders obtain open work permits while claims are pending?
Just to confirm, Madam Chair, PGWP is an open work permit, so I'm not sure if I would be answering the question that's being sought.
Sorry. Okay, thank you. Since January of 2024, how many study permit holders transitioned to postgraduate work permits, and what share remained in the original study region versus moved to another province?
I would be able to answer part of that question. What I can tell you is that we've had in 2025 new PGWP, or 2024, the new PGWP holders were 200,000. And that's a decrease from the previous year of 15%.
What share of them remained in their original study region versus moved?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
What share remained in their original study region versus moved to a different region?
A quick
I
response,
wouldn't.
please.
I
Ms.
don't
Park.
have that information on me today.
IRC does not have that, or you just don't have it with you?
It would have to be a special request to gain that information.
Can you provide that to the committee?
Yep.
Okay, and can I just confirm one thing that
We're at 6 minutes and 30
this
seconds.
is more of a point of order. Things that we request from the committee, can I ask that they be submitted within 28 working calendar days, please?
The request can be made, and I think they'll do their best to do that with that time frame. Okay, thank you, Mr. Redekop. Thank you, Ms. Park. We go to our next questioner, which is Mr. Fragiscatos.
Chair, thank you very much. Thank you to officials for the work that you're doing and for being here today. My question will be on numbers, first of all. Where are we at in terms of international students who have entered Canada in 2025 compared to 2024 and 2023?
So we've actually just posted some of this information on our website, and I can tell you, as I said it in my opening remarks, that we've had for students just over 98,000 less arrivals for this year, which means January to July 31st of this year.
Thank you very much. This is the first of 3 meetings that we're embarking on here today on the International Student Program. For context, can you tell this committee or remind this committee the key reforms that have been put in place under the previous government granted, but that led to the significant decreases that we are seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. So in recognition of some of the issues that were present in the past program, we introduced several measures. The first was to address unsustainable volumes, and that's the intake cap that everyone's familiar with. That was introduced in January 2024. Subsequently, as part of levels planning, for the first time ever, we introduced temporary resident admission, new arrival targets to coincide or to complement the intake cap. Secondly, to make sure that the international student program responded better to the economic needs of Canada, which of course will change. We aligned the postgraduate work permit eligibility to meet those longer-term structural labor market needs, and introduced a minimum level language proficiency, because we know that language proficiency is a strong factor in success in Canada. We also strengthened integrity by raising the financial requirement. It had not been raised in a very long time. So therefore, we raised it in January as well from 10,000 and nearly doubled it over 20,000. We made this a yearly commitment to update it according to Stats Canada data, and therefore it was just recently updated September to 22,895. And then, of course, the letter of verification system was also introduced at the end of 2023. And finally, the regulatory measures that I spoke of at the end of November 2024, and that was really to ensure that there was a way to deal with non-compliant education institutions, and it also instituted the 24-hour work limit.
Yes, and could you just reiterate for this committee the important provision on by 2027 and 5%, no more than 5% of the population?
Yes, as I said, all of these measures are going to lead to part of the 5%. Of course, students are just one part of the temporary residence, so there's other measures as well. But we can say that these measures are starting to have an impact in terms of the quality of students that are coming, and also in terms of the numbers, as I've already mentioned.
Thank you very much. That's very clear and encouraging. A lot of the abuses that unfortunately have been experienced by international students relate to designated learning institutions or learning institutions that frankly haven't met a very good standard. As I understand it, and as we understand it, that is in the provincial purview. A lot of this, I should say, is in the provincial purview. What is the relationship between IRCC and provincial governments with respect to the DLIs and ensuring that there is a better standard that's being met? I know that there's only about a minute and a half left. What's one key measure then that you would point to a change that has happened to ensure a better system?
In order to respect the fact that provinces and territories have jurisdiction over education, and the fact that the federal government has jurisdiction over our borders, it is a joint system that we work very closely with our partners. So we set the overall cap, but it is up to each province to decide how they're going to distribute those allocations. And then, of course, up to the institutions to decide which students are going to be welcomed to submit an application to study in Canada.
So obviously the provinces have a major role to play, and they are tasked with the responsibility of ensuring that the designated learning institutions, the colleges and the universities are meeting a standard to ensure that that abuses are halted entirely, we would hope, but minimized in the beginning, and we see a better outcome.
Absolutely, and provinces and territories, they're the ones who have the authority to designate or de-designate institutions, and so we must work very closely with them as partners.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fragiscatos. Notre prochain intervenant, c'est
Our next intervener is Mr. Doucette. 6 minutes. Thank you for being with us today. When you give a work permit to one of your international students that has been certified in Quebec, what level of government does the medical examination occur, or a look at the police records? Of course, it's an easy question, isn't it?
Merci pour la question.
Thank you very much for your question.
An international student who's currently in Quebec who's applying for a work permit.
OK, j'espère que ça se passera pas comme ça.
I don't have a lot of time, but when you give a permit to an international student, which level of government has the responsibility and the authority to ask for a medical certificate or an international police records check? If it's the federal government, okay. We won't lose time over that. It's not the responsibility of the provinces, and it's not the responsibility of the universities. You agree on that? Yes, because I've just heard that abuses was because of the provinces and universities once again. Last week there was a report of an inquiry on what was being used for work permits by an international criminal organization. Did you happen to read that article or review? Yes? Good. I don't lose lots of time each time I ask a question. So the reply of IRCC with respect to that report was that the situation was catastrophic. It was a provincial situation and the responsibility of the universities. Are you putting the blame? You're laying it on the universities and provinces when, in actual fact, it's a work permit that is governed by the federal government. Is this a matter of bad faith? Thank you for your question.
Is responsible for assessing the eligibility and admissibility of workers, students, and other people foreign nationals who want to come and travel to Canada. So we do that in accordance with the legislated requirements for eligibility and admissibility. We ensure that they are not, excuse me, with the information that is available to us at the time, the officer assesses to ensure that they are not a threat to the security of Canada, the health of Canadians, that they have no criminal background in terms of the information that's provided to us. And we do the assessment where the officer then determines that the individual is not inadmissible. When they do come to Canada, the activities of the foreign national after arriving into Canada and their compliance with the student permit or work permit is a responsibility of IRCC, joint responsibility with ESTC with regards to work permits. But any other activity, whether it may be criminal and otherwise, would be under the purview of our enforcement partners, such as CBSA or RCMP.
OK. Pour rentrer au Québec, ces criminels-là, souvent...
To come into Quebec, often these criminals are between 20 and 30 years of age, and they've sort of slipped in. Many of them get a study permit for the universities in the area. According to the Detective Sergeant Dubert, he said that we found that there was a system to bring in these students. After they're in, are you aware of this, that this type of situation exists? Are you aware in your department that it does?
Do work very closely again with our enforcement partners as well as police services across the country. So when we are made aware of criminal activity or fraud trends that link to immigration, that link to potentially foreign nationals coming into Canada, we're able to assess and determine whether or not we can identify those trends in future applications. We do have now measures in place, as my colleague mentioned, like the letter of acceptance verification, which has, since it's been in place, identified over 14,000 potentially fraudulent letters of acceptance, where we're able to then refuse applicants who are not genuine students coming into Canada. We also rely on our post-secondary institutions or our provinces to tell us when students are not complying and not attending school.
Est-ce qu'il y a un mécanisme d'IRCC?
Does IRCC have a mechanism or a tool that if a university has a student presently of following courses, is there some sort of tool that exists where this could be dealt with? And if so, what is it?
Where it's been in place actually since 2016, and in 2024 it was made mandatory. So all of the provinces are on board right now. We are working with the province of Quebec to onboard. So twice a year, all of the designated learning institutions must let us know whether or not an individual who has entered Canada on a student permit has actually registered and is attending school. and they will send us that information back so we can determine whether or not students are in compliance.
Et donc, si les universités, tout le monde vous se met à
And
alerte.
if the university alerts you that there is an international student that hasn't registered, say, that criminal network exists, it represents $500 million in terms of car theft and all kinds of threats and the difficulties. So it seems to me something isn't working. So
Canada, as foreign nationals, as students, are compliant and are students according to our spring assessment. So we do the verification with the designated learning institutions twice a year. We do it in the spring and fall. And according to our spring data, 91% of the students that were reported on were compliant, were registered and in school. 8% were potentially non-compliant, which means there's further activities that we need to do to look into, whether there could be an administrative error. IRCC also conducts 2,000 investigations a year for students who are potentially non-compliant.
Excusez-moi.
Merci, Monsieur Duceppe.
thank you, Mr. Duceppe.
Que si on
But
prend-
if 15 seconds after each of my replies to answer my question, it goes far less quickly than it happens in English. So I think you're going to have to find a solution when you pass from English to French. It can go very quickly, bing bang, where you're using one language. But for me, when you're switching languages, there is a few second delay always with the interpretation. And if that's taken away from my time, it's a problem.
An extra minute, and I will keep on accommodating. Thank you, Monsieur Duceppe. Okay, we're into our second round, and our first questioner is Mr. Pierre Paulus. S'il vous plaît.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Chair. Ladies, my colleague from the Bloc Québécois asked you a question earlier about the reporting on Télévision du Nord and Radio-Canada. There are students come in from Africa, from the Ivory Coast and elsewhere that are participating in this type of fraud, criminal network, and there is an impact to it. Earlier, you spoke about process. You spoke about the second evaluation that occurs. I'm wondering how it can be that these individuals, these criminals, are not detected once they come into the country. Madame Zofar?
The officer who is making the decision for admissibility into Canada is making that decision based on the information that's provided to them. So first they will look at the application. They will collect biometrics, so that's fingerprints to identify that the individual is who they say they are. We actually do information sharing as well with our international partners to see if there's any derogatory information on that client or that applicant, and if there's any indicators of elevated risk, so potentially criminal activity, national security concerns, that file will be referred to our public safety partners at the Canada Border Services Agency and CSIS. So the officers are doing everything in their power to make sure that they are satisfied that an individual, when they're applying, is not criminally or otherwise inadmissible to Canada. Once they're in Canada, it is challenging to predict their behavior. However,
Merci, mais là, maintenant, j'aimerais savoir deuxième
Thank you very
question.
much. I'd like to ask a second question at the present time. How many people are here in Canada, on Canadian territory, on study permits, but have been found guilty of fraud? Can you tell me the number of these people? How many have been found guilty, and what's happening to them?
Merci pour la question. That's a challenging question to answer, depending on the type of fraud we're looking at. If your question, Madam Chair, is for the fraud in the student program, so they were misrepresenting themselves as students and then found as non-genuine students. We have that data. I don't have it in front of me right now. If there's criminal fraud, that would be a matter that we would have to rely on our police partners.
Il y a combien de faux étudiants?
Yeah, but how many false students, fraudulent students are there, do you know?
We do have numbers from 2023, if I recall correctly. There was about 1,500 students that potentially were implicated in fraud. those investigations were undertaken by the CBSA. Not all of them were eventually found to have committed fraud, but it was under the...
Dans le reportage, on a mis l'accent.
In that report, they stressed what Radio-Canada called the African mafia. I asked a question about that to the minister, but I was called racist. But this is a matter of public safety, is it not? There is a specific problem in Quebec because of the language, so people from the Ivory Coast come to Quebec supposedly to study, but actually carry out criminal activity. Are there other areas in Canada that you are aware of where this fraud occurs? Is it peculiar to Quebec?
I don't know if there's other areas where it occurs as frequently as you're reporting, Madam Chair. We do, however, have what we call indicator packages that our officers use. They're provided by our public safety partners. These indicator packages are specific to different regions of the world or different cohorts that will identify specific indicators for our officers to look for when we get applications related to that region or that cohort. So when we receive this type of information from our police and law enforcement partners, we do update those for our officers.
1 minute, Mr. Paul Hughes.
Dans le reportage, ma question
In the report for Ms. Gill, in the Radio-Canada report, they talked about victims who tried to alert the authorities to the fraud that was ongoing, but they didn't get any access. I would imagine the first ones they contact is the police, but is it possible that immigration agents would be alerted and to get some answers? Because very often it's vacuum. Nothing happens.
We do have a tip line. We do have information that is provided to IRCC from either anonymized individuals or people who are bringing information forward. All of those tips are investigated. We also get information from our police partners and law enforcement partners, but we take every tip or incident seriously, and we will look into that to the best of our ability.
Merci, Monsieur Paulus.
Thank you, Mr. Paulus.
Will be for the Liberals, Ms. Zaid.
Madam Chair, we know that the International Student Program is a shared responsibility, with the federal government managing the study permits and the provinces overseeing the designated learning institutions. In recent years, international students' enrollment has grown rapidly, especially in Ontario, raising concerns about the student well-being and the integrity of the program. Based on the data I was able to get, in 2023, Ontario hosted roughly 54% of Canada's 833,920 post-secondary international students. I would like to focus on how the federal government raised these concerns with Ontario and why federal action became necessary when the province of Ontario did not act. So my first question to the officials is, can you tell the committee when IRCC first raised concerns with the Government of Ontario about the pace of growth in international student enrollment and what specific risks were flagged at that time?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. I wouldn't be able to specifically say when it was raised with Ontario. We meet with our partners on a regular basis to exchange information and to make sure that the system is functioning well. I would say that there have been lots of meetings related to how we can make everything better. We are starting to see progress, and one of the things that we have seen is that the rental markets are cooling down, and that's one of the objectives that we had when we started the reforms, to make sure that international students were not a burden on the housing system. For example, the recent CMHC report reported that rental price growth slowed from 8.9% to 3.2% in Kitchener-Waterloo, and similarly in Hamilton from 12.8 to 2.4. And they had cited it due to lower international student numbers.
What efforts did the IRCC make to engage the Government of Ontario on strengthening the oversight of the designated learning institutions, and what responses did you receive from the province of Ontario?
Ontario, naturally, given the size of Ontario and the population, it is a province that we engage with regularly. We just recently had a meeting with all of our provincial partners to give them an update on all of the changes and what kind of results that we're seeing. We also engaged in consultations related to the PGWP program, because we know that that is also something that PTs or provinces and territories are concerned about, and that we welcome their feedback. So that was part of the express entry category-based selection. They are aware that we use that information, particularly from provinces and territories, in order to inform our opinions going forward.
What tools the provinces have in making these designated learning institutions more accountable? And has Ontario used them?
Yes. So as I mentioned, Madam Chair, it is under the authority of provinces and territories to decide which institutions to designate. So they do have ultimate authority over the education sector.
Could you outline the specific tools Ontario had at its disposal, such as regulating private colleges, setting enrollment caps specially, or tightening the quality assurance that could have been used to manage the growth responsibly?
But sorry, Madam Chair, if you're referring to the situation before the reforms, I think there were lots of long-standing funding challenges in the education sector, which ultimately led a lot of institutions to recruit in large volumes before the caps were introduced. The federal government then proceeded to introduce the caps, but as I mentioned earlier, it is each province and territory gets an allocation based on the overall numbers, and it is up to them to determine which institutions get their allocations. The only caveat that we put on that is a certain percentage being reserved for graduate students, just to make sure that we are continue to welcome talent.
Thank you, Ms. Park. Thank you, Ms. Zaid. Maintenant, c'est Monsieur Duceppe pour 2 minutes.
Mr. Duceppe, 2.5 minutes, please. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just to be clear, do you find it acceptable that the spokesperson of your department has attached a blame to the universities and the government of Quebec for this program that you alone are responsible for managing?
The International Student Compliance Program and the student program is a joint responsibility. There are absolutely measures that IRCC is responsible for.
Excusez-moi, juste un instant là. On va s'entendre.
Just a second here. Let's understand each other. The program, the international program for international students for Canada is for Canada. It's not the same as for Quebec. It is an international program that is administered by the federal government of Canada, nobody else. But that Immigration Department of Canada is the one that manages the program. So do you think it's acceptable that your own program is attaching blame to the universities and the government of Quebec without a single mea culpa on the part of the federal government? I'd just like to add a clarification here. As I said, it's not just the federal government that has total control. Of course, we issue the visas, but the provinces and the institutions that deal with, I understand it, just excuse me. It is the prerogative of the federal government, the supreme authority that determines who enters or not on our territory. It's not the university. It is the exclusive responsibility of the federal government. So is it possible for you to say something that should be easy to say? In all the countries of the world, it works like that. Can you say, yes, it is our exclusive responsibility? With respect to borders, we have already said that it is the responsibility of the federal government. So why are the universities responsible for what in the programs that you deal with? It is the universities that invite the students. That's the first step. Yes, but there is responsibility that's involved here, accountability. So is it the exclusive responsibility of the federal government to determine who comes into the country? Is it not? So why are you blaming Quebec and the learning institutions there? Madam Chair, as I did try to explain, there are several steps in the process. It's not just the federal government. It's not the federal government alone that can have a program for foreign students. But I imagine, thank you.
We are now still in the second round, and we have Mr. Menegakis for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to our officials for being here with us today and sharing all the information with us. What would be helpful, I wonder if you could undertake to provide us with a table of the different immigration streams by year, by stream, for, say, the last 10 years. I'd like to see where that has gone in order to be able to understand what you're saying, that you're seeing improvements and so forth. I'd like to see where it's gone over the last 10 years, given the fact that we've had 7 different immigration ministers over the last 10 years. So would you undertake to provide that to us, please, within the next, say, 28 days?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to confirm the request, because I think, are you referring specifically to
I'm referring to all of the streams.
Students' programs?
Economic, family, and compassionate, all the streams, by year for the last, say, 10 years.
And what exactly, because there is a lot of data, so...
Just the total number from
total
each
number
stream,
that we've received.
With percentages. Back in the day, we had measures for that. 65% would come through our economic streams.
According to the levels plan?
And the levels and so forth. I'd like to see where that's gone over the last 10 years. I know there's some information available on the website, but if you can provide the committee with that graphic, I think that would be very useful for us.
Of each year, what the levels plan
Correct.
has been for immigration? Okay.
What the results were for each year. Okay.
The levels plan and then the admissions against that levels plan.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you share with us what advice you've given the government regarding the long-term strategy for managing the international student program?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In terms of the advice, as I've mentioned, we've only just embarked on all of the changes within the last 18 months. I tried to cite the time frame in which a lot of the changes were introduced, and that was to suggest that it's going to take some time for us to see some of those results. And to ensure that we are making changes based on evidence, there is a certain period of time that is required in order to know whether or not we should continue on that path. But I will say this in terms of early results, that as of July 31st, and this is on our website, there were roughly 786 study permit holders in Canada, compared to 995,000 at the end of 2023, and that is a 21% reduction.
Well, okay. This kind of leads me into my next question, if you don't mind. How many international students are in the country right now on valid student visas?
So that is as of July 31st, 2025. It's a combination, but it's about 499,000 with just study permits, and it's 200 and the total is 786 that have study permits and work permits.
786,000? So how many international student visas were approved since last year, just into 2025?
Just in 2025. The number of decisions taken so far this year is 174,000.
174,000? Okay, because a quick Google search said 437,000 for the year. Is that an inaccurate number?
I'm sorry, what number did you cite?
437,000.
That is actually the study permit issuance target. So the number of approvals. So there are several numbers. So you will see that there's a number for the number of new arrivals. There's also a number for the number of approvals, which actually leads to a certain number of arrivals.
What advice, if any, has the IRCC given the government regarding institutions who take advantage of the international student program?
My colleague, Aisha Zafar, has been outlining some of the measures that we've put in place to strengthen the integrity and through the reporting system, working with our DLIs. I will cite as well that, or recite the 14,000 letters of acceptance that we have actually intercepted. So these are ones that didn't even make it here because we were able to intercept them.
Okay, so there hasn't been an investigation confirming those 14,000, and if so, what action has been taken in your department or others in the government to bring accountability to the offenders?
Thank you for the question. So yes, when we look at potentially 14,000 fraudulent letters of acceptance, we take the data and we look at the indicators in each of those applications. Is there something that's consistent in each of those applications that identifies for us that this is a large-scale fraud, or there is something that individuals are trying to circumvent the program, and we will issue reports or other types of packages for our officers so that they can look out for those in future applications. We've done that in other cohorts as well. Last year, we were able to determine that there was a fraud happening in the visitor program. We did the activities that I just mentioned. We were able to increase the identification of fraud and misrepresentation in that court by 241% over the course of a couple of months. So that's the system that we look at. If we either get information from our partners, we get tips, we look at our own trends, and we look at those indicators and see how can that improve our processing and our ability to identify that fraud and abuse in the future. And
do you agree that the number
15
of international...
seconds. 15 seconds, so
50
very
seconds?
quick, yes.
Do you agree that the number of international students let into the country impacts housing prices? You said that you thought in some communities you've seen that come down somewhat. What proof do you have that it's the result of the actions that you're taking is what's causing the housing prices or the housing market to slow down? Because there's a whole bunch of other factors that affect housing prices in the country. I wonder how you identify that as being directly related to the actions that you've taken.
So it wasn't us that put that forward. I cited a study by CMHC that looked at some municipalities that are with universities, and what they had cited was that since we have put in some of the measures to control volumes and some of the other measures, that there has been a decrease on pressures in the housing market.
Thank you, Mr. Menegakis. Our next questioner will be Ms. Sodi. For 5 minutes, please.
First and foremost, I wanted to thank you guys for taking the time out of your day to meet with us. I'd like to frame my first question around international student fraud and the abuse that some of them may face. Can either one of you please outline what recent steps IRCC has taken to combat instances of fraud experienced by international students?
Thank you for the question. So as we talked about, the integrity measures that we've put in place over the last couple of years and strengthened. A couple of them will relate to the conditions that international students may face when they come into Canada. The first, as my colleague mentioned earlier, is the increase of the financial requirement. So this ensures that students who are coming into Canada are able to financially support themselves. That means that they will be able to house and feed themselves and then conduct their studies and go to school. We've also put in the letter of acceptance verification program. This is a key because, as many members are aware, Madam Chair, in 2023, jointly with the Canada Border Services Agency, we identified that there was a significant letter of acceptance fraud. And there were international students who also were victims of that fraud, didn't know that those letters of acceptance were fraudulent. Our ability now for every single student permit for our officers to automatically verify with the learning institution that the letter of acceptance is actually authentic has resulted in that 14,000 number that we presented, where we've identified potentially fraudulent letters of acceptance. So this protects the students as well. And in terms of student compliance, we do require, as I mentioned, twice a year for designated learning institutions to confirm for us that students are actually registered. Where we see that there is no match or that they are potentially not registered or attending school, we're able to conduct our own investigation. The learning institution can follow up, and we will be starting to share that data with provinces and territories as well in the spring, so that they can also follow up and see whether it in fact is fraud or that there's some other reason why the student's not attending. And then we would be able to collectively address the gaps in that way.
Thank you for your answer. I think it was very well detailed. You had mentioned CBSA, the use of CBSA in your answer. Can you just tell us how the tools that will be provided by Bill C2 will allow IRCC to better combat immigration fraud stemming from the International Student Program?
Thank you for the question. Under C2, one of the provisions that we are looking for is the ability for greater information sharing in the immigration program. Right now, we do not have the legislated ability, except for the Privacy Act, to share immigration personal information for purposes other than assessing the application. So what that means is a couple of things. We're not able to share personal information with provinces and territories to make sure that individuals who are accessing provincial benefits, for instance, or social services are actually in status. We are not able to share certain pieces of information with our federal partners outside of the immigration stream. But perhaps most importantly for me is currently we are not able to share immigration information on applications between our business lines. What that means is we look at every application as an independent individual application. So if somebody applies to be a temporary resident as a student, and then later on they apply for permanent resident, we're looking at those as separate applications. We can't share the information that was provided throughout their immigration process all the way until they become a permanent resident or citizen. So in order to improve the integrity and fraud in the system, but also facilitate for those individuals not having to send us the same information, and we can omit errors that way as well, C2 will help with that information sharing.
Thank you once again. My last question is, how many instances of fraud has IRCC's new PAL requirement stopped since being enacted?
Quick answer, please.
Sorry, I think you're actually referring to the LOA system rather than the PAL system, because the PAL is just the allocations that are given to provinces and territories. And we'd had previously mentioned the number of 14,000.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Park. Thank you, Ms. Soti. Our next questioner, we're starting the third round, and so we will go to Mr. Ma for 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, my principal concern is the reputation of Canada as a top destination for international students through our institutions that are ranked and esteemed globally. We are speaking of likes of the University of Toronto, McGill, and UBC, not the colleges that are housed in shopping malls and strip malls. So my first question is, when the government issues study permits, is there a distinction between those attending premium institutions and those attending shopping mall diploma mills?
Maybe before I invite my colleague to respond to the last part.
It should be a very simple yes or no answer.
As stated, each application is going to be assessed on its merits. So part of the assessment of an application is the institution that they're going to and the kind of student that
So is
they
that a
have
yes
been.
or is that a no?
I think I have answered the question, but yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yeah.
So then the following question is, shopping mall diploma mills that accept international students are considered designated learning institutions, as we discussed earlier, making them equal to our premium research universities. From a percentage standpoint, what is the split of study permits allocated to our premium institutions versus those given to the shopping mall diploma mills?
That would be determined by each province and territory, but what I can tell you is that through the measures that were introduced, the share of university degree students is starting to grow. So from 30% to 33%, and the share of college students is starting to decrease from 44 to 40% since the cap was imposed.
So, Ms. Park, we were looking at, you were part of the group that was providing strategic advice to the minister at the time of the strategy and rolling forward. Did you or your colleagues advise the minister at the time regarding the foreign student permits issued during that time? Because there was a massive spike in permits during that time. Did you or any of your colleagues advise the minister not to increase permits to the level that he did?
Just as a point of correction, Madam Chair, I was actually not part I did not hold this position at that time.
Were you not at the time in 2022 a ADM for strategic and program policy sector? So therefore you were advising.
It was not part of my portfolio.
I see. So, okay. So you're saying you were not part of that number. So, but your colleagues did not recommend the minister either?
I cannot speak on behalf of my colleagues at that time in 2022.
So can the witnesses here give an answer, yes or no?
We would not be able to do that at this time.
So will you be providing that information to the committee within the 28 calendar days?
I'm a bit unclear
order,
on what
Chair.
information I'm providing.
Yes, Mr. Fredgiscatos.
Chair, point of order. This 28-day point has come up a number of times. If officials can provide it within that time, fine. But let's, I just remind colleagues that we haven't passed a motion to that effect. And so timelines vary according to how easily information can be found. There's any number of factors.
Thank you, Mr. Fredgiscatos.
As
It's
you
not
know.
a point of order.
This has come up a number of times.
But just, Mr. Mudd, just so we can clarify, because you've asked a question to try to get information. So you're trying to get information about whether there was advice given by an official in the department to actually increase or decrease. Can you just repeat the question that you would like?
Yes.
The information you'd like.
The question is, did the department provide the recommendation to the then minister on either increasing or decreasing the number of foreign students program?
And that was in 2022?
Yes.
Okay. So is it possible, Ms. Park, for you to take that away and see if you could provide information within 28 days?
I could, but I guess I would add that in 2022, there was no cap on international students, so it would not have been a point of discussion because we were processing the applications as they were received. That's part of the reason that in 2024, we move forward with the cap.
So I think, Mr. Ma, how many seconds do we have left? 1 minute? 30 seconds. 30 seconds. So you have 30 seconds left.
So
please.
just to follow up on that, so then the department was following a process and approving without any sort of quota or targets, and it was just a free flow, free approval, and that's what caused this issue?
Madam Chair, I would not characterize it as a free flow. I think that the applications come in.
But you just said there was no
There
limitation.
was no cap at the
Okay.
time in terms of the number of applications that we would receive. I think we relied very heavily on the fact that there's lots of benefits to international students as well. So I don't think that we
Is that-
should
Thank you,
ignore
Mr.
that.
include-
Park. Thank you, Mr. Ma. Your time is up. Thank you. Now we go to Mr. Fredescatos for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Ms. Safar, didn't expect to ask questions about C2 today, but I think you focused on an area of great interest for this committee. Now, my friend Mr. Duceppe is looking at me and asking, how does this relate to international students? I'm sure, but it does, because it does speak to the integrity of the overall system, of which the international student program is obviously a part. So could you go over that again? Because I think for people, the millions of people watching on CPAC, of course, they won't necessarily pick up on the point, perhaps, because this is an area that you are working in. This is your area of expertise. How does the change that's proposed in C2 guard against the fraud that has been an issue with international students, or some international students in the past?
Thank you for the question. The information sharing provision in C2 isn't specific to international students, but it does provide us with integrity throughout the system, enhanced integrity throughout the system. With our information is key. So as we've said before, the officers are only able to make an assessment for admissibility and eligibility, which is which is key for a foreign national entering into Canada, based on the information that is in front of them. So the information in front of them is information that's provided on the application. We collect biometrics, we do criminal assessments, we share information with our partners to see if there's any derogatory information. But as I mentioned before, one of the key pieces that is missing is our ability to share between our business lines on various applications. So even if we're not talking about fraud, if we're talking about just administrative errors, an individual filling out an application for a visitor visa may have incorrectly put in a place of birth based on what their passport said or didn't at the time. As they progress throughout the process, it might be different on a permanent resident application, and we want to be able to identify that throughout the system. We also want to be able to share information with provinces and territories so that it not only helps facilitate for clients their ability to access provincial services and benefits, but it also allows the provinces to determine whether or not somebody is abusing the provincial services and benefits. And then while we have information sharing agreements with our international partners, we rely on consistent use and the Privacy Act to share with our federal partners. As we mentioned before, immigration enforcement, and the borders is a joint responsibility with a number of different departments in the federal government, so this would allow us to do that as well. There are also other provisions within C2. One of them would be what we refer to as mass authorities, and generally it would allow through order in council an order to mass cancel, suspend, alter immigration documents that have been issued for reasons in the public interest. Public interest isn't defined because there could be various reasons that the GIC would determine it's in public interest. For instance, there could be a cyber attack issuing fraudulent visas, and we would want to mass cancel those. We currently don't have the ability to do that under the legislation. It would also finally bring efficiencies to our asylum program. So as it may pertain to individuals who are claiming asylum and are non-genuine claimants, we want to make the system more efficient and fast, and it would introduce two ineligibilities with regards to that as well.
Time remaining, Madam Chair? I'm splitting my time with Mr. El Soud, who's a new member and very passionate on immigration. So he's subbing in today, but I'm sharing my time.
Proud to be subbing in. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for taking the time to be with us. I'm mindful of how busy you are, and so I truly appreciate you taking the time. My question is on IRCC announcing digital modernization efforts to streamline processing and client interactions. Can you tell us how these tools will improve transparency and reduce processing times?
Thank you for the question. Yes, IRCC continues to make investments in modernization with the intent of two focused outcomes. One is improving efficiencies. So we do use advanced analytics as well to do risk triaging and to automate some of the decision making. In addition, we're also looking at ways to improve client transparency. As referenced by my colleagues, there is more information in terms of the non-permanent resident cohorts that are in Canada, so our website's been updated with that frequently. In addition, we're starting to make changes to how processing times are published so that clients can see where in the queue they are. So we've recently just done this for one line of business and are piloting that. In addition, we've recently launched what's called officer decision notes. So for clients who are applying for temporary resident lines of business, at the time of their refusal letter being sent to them, we're also providing to the clients the officer's notes that supported that decision for a refusal. So that is being sent to them automatically as part of that process. So those are some of the
Thank you, Ms. Gill.
initiatives.
Sorry, we've gone over, and thank you. I think everybody will be rejoicing at these modernization information. So thank you. La prochaine, c'est Monsieur Duceppe pour
Mr. Duceppe, you're next, 2.5 minutes. To be able to settle a problem, first of all, you have to be able to name the problem. There's an international criminal network that's making many victims in Quebec, $500 million of criminal income because of that. And it goes elsewhere. That money specifically is under the IRCC's student program. It's using it to achieve its ends. Are you aware of that in your department or not?
I personally don't have the details of the criminal investigation that you're referring to. However, what we do is when there is indications that individuals have come, foreign nationals have come into Canada and committed crimes, CBSA, the RCMP, and local police will investigate those crimes. Any information that is relayed to us, and we do have relationships with those organizations, we will then use to ensure that we don't provide permits in the future to individuals with the same characteristics.
Madame la Présidente, au début du comité,
At the very beginning of the committee, Madam Chair, I asked the witnesses if they had seen the report on that inquiry last week, and they said yes, they had. So I'm going to repeat it. Did you see it?
Details about the criminal investigation other than what's in the report.
dans le reportage de 1 heure.
That hour-long report, that inquiry, there was specifically stated that the criminal organization was using IRCC programs to produce criminal outcomes worth $500 million for other purposes. I'm not just here to say things. I want to settle the situation. If you are not able to say that there is a problem within your department specifically attached to a specific program in your department, how can you say then that there is no problem if you don't give it a name?
Mr. Frederiskatos, point of order.
I have immense respect for our colleague, and he's an experienced member of this committee in particular, but he will have the opportunity to ask the minister questions that are probably more political in nature rather than putting officials in I think, a difficult position to share their opinion on policy.
Not a point of order, Mr. Frederiskatos.
Je peux répondre au point d'ordre, j'imagine?
Yes, another one.
Can I answer can I answer the point of order? When a spokesperson of the department for Immigration responds to that report, to any report, I think I'm entitled to ask that so-called spokesperson questions, and that person is here today. So I think I'm fully entitled to ask questions of this nature.
30 seconds, if you want to take it.
Il n'y a personne qui a répondu à ma question.
Yeah, but nobody's answered my question yet. Is there a problem or not?
Chair, while I'm aware of the report, I did not watch the full 1 hour investigation, so I don't have all of the details. I am aware of the report. We are certainly seized with any type of abuse or fraud in our program, and we take that very seriously. And any information that we can glean, whether it's through open source information, through media reports, through our law enforcement partners, we do take that and ensure that we are closing any gaps and addressing any future potential fraud or abuse of the immigration program. But I will say that the vast majority of individuals, whether students, workers, visitors, or permanent residents who apply and do enter Canada, are honest, do not abuse, and do not defraud the system. But where there are the small percentages that do, we take that very seriously.
Thank you, Ms. Zafar. Thank you, Monsieur Duceppe. I think we're still in our third round, and we have next Ms. Rempel-Garner for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Officials, you've talked about Bill C-2 as a solve for some of these issues. Is it your opinion that the Bill C-2 is charter compliant?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. We have gone through the necessary steps to, with our justice colleagues, to look at the...
And so have you provided advice to the minister that it is charter compliant?
I have not looked at all the areas of Bill C-2, so I would have to...
Has anybody in your department provided advice to the minister that it's charter compliant?
That would be with our justice colleagues, so I would not be able to speak with that. So you don't know? At this time, I do not know.
Okay. So, for example, the refugee lab at Osgoode Hall Law School argued that Part 7 could violate some of the charter. So it's your opinion that Bill C-2 is in fact charter compliant and that outlets like this would be mistaken. Is that correct?
That is not my opinion. I also am not responsible for the asylum program, so I would need to talk to my colleagues about that.
Okay, so we're talking about Bill C-2 as a fix for this, but we're not sure if it's charter compliant. Thank you. Very good. Could you also, you talked about study permits that have been withdrawn. How many study permits have been withdrawn because of criminal activities over the past 4 years?
Thank you. Well, we could provide the total number that have been withdrawn. If a client is withdrawing their application, we would not know for what reason they're choosing to withdraw.
So you don't track this?
We would be tracking if we were looking at refusing for any concerns related to criminality.
Okay, so how many have been withdrawn or refused due to criminality in the last 4 years?
We don't have that statistic with us today.
Okay, can you table that with committee? Yes? Thank you. What specific countries has IRCC identified frauds from? Is there a predominant country?
Thank you for the question. So with regards to fraud, we, and it depends on the different streams. So the one I can speak to where we did a...
I just want to know a country. I don't have a lot of time.
India is one of the top countries where we identify fraud.
You also said that 8% of students in your testimony are non-compliant and have disappeared in Canada with study permits. That works out to, by my math, about 79,000 based on data from end of year 2004. Do you know where these people are?
So I'd like to clarify that I mentioned 8% of the students that we asked for compliance information from were potentially non-compliant. So in terms of the total number of students that we did ask for compliance, that results in potentially 47,175. We have not yet determined whether or not they are fully non-compliant.
Okay.
These are initial results that the institutions provide to us.
Could you find them if they are compliant?
Any foreign national in Canada would be under the purview of the Canada Border Services Agency, so they have an inland investigation
So how do you
team.
know if your measures are effective?
We are constantly collecting that data. So as I mentioned...
So you do share data with CBSA?
We do share data with CBSA.
Okay, but you don't know where they are, if they're compliant?
So if they are compliant,
Or
they
not
would be
compliant.
registered in the post-secondary institution.
Okay, I've heard enough. How many right now are fully non-compliant?
I don't have that number.
Can you provide that with committee?
That would be a challenging number because
So how do you, if you don't know how many are non-compliant, how can you track them and remove them?
So the 8% are potentially non-compliant, meaning that the university or the post-secondary institution, the DLI, has reported back that they don't have information that these individuals
Madam
are
Chair, I'd also
currently
like to use my
registered.
time to give a verbal notice of motion that a summons do issue for Dr. John Tibbetts, President of Conestoga College, to appear before the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration by himself for no less than 1 hour to give testimony further to the committee study on Canada's International Student Program and study permits at a date and time to be fixed by the chair of the committee, but no later than 3 weeks following the adoption of this motion. I, Madam Chair, am shocked that Mr. Tibbetts does not think that it's important to come to this study, particularly given that Seneca College should probably come too, but Conestoga College has had numerous stories about abuse of foreign students. Essentially, all of the media stories I've heard is that under his leadership, Conestoga College has expanded profit but forced students out into food banks, has created a massive housing crisis in the region. And the fact that he is ignoring this committee tells me only one thing, that I am right, and that we are going to have to make recommendations with him not appearing. So I am hoping I don't have to move this motion. I think it is fairly embarrassing that that he would choose not to come to this committee. So it is a shot across the bow. I really hope, Madam Chair, that President Tibbetts would avail himself of the invitation to come to this committee and that we do not have to make a major media story about him choosing not to and trying to send his lobby group instead. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rempel-Garner. And I think that concludes your 5 minutes. Next on our list is Ms. Salma Zaid.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to our witnesses who are here on this important study. I would like to ask you in regards to the work permits which are issued after the completion of the courses which the international students are coming in, like who is eligible for the work permit, and are there any specific courses or like codes which are defined that only those people would be able to get the work permits?
Thank you for the question. For the postgraduate work permit, as I mentioned, it is an open work permit. Those who we did introduce some changes to the eligibility of that work permit in November 1st, 2024. And essentially what we did was we introduced language requirements, so a slightly higher language requirement if you are a university student as opposed to a college student. And we also said that if you were in college, then there was a requirement that your field of study be aligned to Canada's economic needs, and that's why we do the consultations on the category-based selection of express entry to align those needs with the number of work permits that we issued to international students.
Thank you. So are there any specific codes and like how that decision is made? Like is there any research you have that that only the work permits will be issued for these subjects or the codes?
They would have had to have applied for the postgraduate work permit, and they have to be international students, and so we do that through the eligibility requirements.
Because some institutions like colleges like Centennial College are saying that there's a certain fields of studies where the international students are not eligible to get the work permits, and that's affecting the courses which they are offering at their colleges.
Yes. Absolutely. One of the reasons that we introduced the field of study is to make sure that when international students are coming to Canada, that they are hopefully studying in areas where they could in the future contribute to the economy of Canada, and that's why we're saying, because now you go from international student to a temporary worker, our expectation is that it is going to be in a field or in an area where there is a labor need in Canada.
Next question is that can you tell us how IRCC has communicated the recent policy changes to international students and the post-secondary institutions so that clients and stakeholders can make informed choices and understand the system better?
There are many ways that we have endeavored to share that information. We know that it's very important. As I cited, there's many changes that have taken place. So, of course, we use the information on our website. We also have regular updates to provinces and territories, and also with national education associations, and also with specific or individual DLIs. There's a lot more of them than us, so it makes it a little bit challenging, but that is why we attempt to share as much as possible in writing.
Do I have some time? Okay. So in regards to the housing needs, like since the introduction of the international student cap, like what measurable benefits have we seen so far in relieving the pressure on the local housing markets? And can you point to any metrics showing these benefits?
Yeah, thank you. I had already cited some of those benefits, and there was because of the cap and the reduction to international student volumes, particularly in those communities where there's a higher percentage of students, domestic and international. What we have seen is that since the cap, there has been a cooling down of the rental market.
Any data you have for City of Toronto?
Yep. I don't have it specifically for Toronto because we were citing not IRCC stats, but from CMHC as the official source, but we can endeavor to get that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Park. Thank you so much, Ms. Zaid. Because we started about 7 minutes late, I think we have enough time for maybe 2 minutes for the Conservatives, 2 minutes for the Liberals, and then Monsieur Duceppe, if you would like 2 minutes, I can give 2 minutes each to complete this section of our agenda for today. So we'll start with Mr. Davies, followed by Ms. Zodi, and then we'll end off with Monsieur Duceppe. Okay, Mr. Davies, for 2 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Over the course of the election campaign, I appreciate all of the comments that are being made here today about the intricacies of running this department. But the thing that I heard most of was that the student immigration and visa program was completely broken. We went from 350,000 people, roughly 350,000 people in 2015, to just under 1 million in 2023. So, does anybody track the financial implication that this has had? The sudden shift of completely turning the program and its open-ended application process. Do you track the financial implications on this on post-secondary institutions?
Global Affairs Canada has commissioned a number of studies tracking the financial implications and impact of the student program in Canada in relation to GDP and a number of other metrics, and I think they're preparing to issue another update on that very shortly.
Okay, well, interestingly, in the fall economic statement last year, the federal government changed the law relating to the capacity or ability of post-secondary institutions to seek creditor protection or even protection under bankruptcy laws. So when you did when the department flip-flopped on its student the number of students coming in, are you aware that that you've got some serious implications for financial institutions, that you believe that the taxpayer should actually now be responsible for bailing out post-secondary institutions as a result of the failures of the student visa program?
I don't think I would be able to speak to the points that you're raising at this time.
Okay, so it just...
Thank you so much, Mr. Davies. Thank you. Ms. Sodi, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the additional time. I'll be really quick. Can either one of you please let us know what performance measures is IRCC using to assess whether recent policy changes to the international student program are achieving their intended results? And can you update us about the progress of any of these performance indicators?
For the question, as I have indicated, because a lot of the changes were implemented either at the very end of 2023 and most of 2024, a lot of the results would not necessarily be fully available at this time. All I can provide to you at this time is some of those early results, and what you have seen is that we have been able to bring down the number of international students who are in Canada, which has also resulted in a cooling of the housing market as well.
Thank you. How much time do I have?
50 seconds, but you don't have to take it.
Okay. I'll leave it just because I don't think we'll have enough time for an answer.
Thank you so much, Ms.
Je vais prendre les 50 secondes.
I'll take the 50 seconds. Thank you for being here. I know our questions have been difficult ones. You said that you received a summary of the report, of the reporting. At least that's what I understand. I think that Émission Enquête is a really big deal in Quebec. It was the first of the new season last week. So that's an enormous scandal in Quebec. It was your department's answers were not much appreciated by the universities or the government of Quebec. So I invite you to reflect on what you see and take a good look at that particular show. Before this report, were you aware of the fact that there were criminal activities here in Canada?
Thank you for the question. Yes, I am aware that there are criminal activities happening in Canada, some of those undertaken by foreign.
De ce réseau-là particulièrement, est-ce que vous
That particular network, though, I'm wondering about. Did you know them?
Parfait. À ce moment-là, selon vous, quels outils IRCC...
What tools, then, would you think would be good ones to develop and to deal with this type of network? It was an extraordinary journalist that prepared that particular show, that report, and reporting. But you want to have tools to be sure that this type of situation never reoccurs again, so that there would be all these hundreds of victims that have suffered because of the scam. Some people lost their life savings, some $300,000. So what tools can you develop to prevent this again?
The measures that we talked about today will help. Unfortunately, sometimes the negative results that we see from foreign nationals entering Canada, if they have committed some type of fraud, happen after, maybe 6 months to a year after the permits have been issued. So there's always a lag time in terms of what we actually see resulting. We're, from an immigration's perspective, able to take that information and, as I mentioned, feed it back into the system so we're not bringing in or allowing foreign nationals to come in with similar intentions or characteristics. When something like this happens, we do work very closely with our law enforcement partners. I myself attend various Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police committees, where if there are immigration links, we're able to see how can we take the law enforcement or criminal information and improve our systems and our processes. So there is that continuous conversation.
Donc, si on développe de nouveaux outils, ça veut dire...
So if you develop the tools, that means that...
Thank you, Monsieur Duceppe. I think we're at above time. So I just want to say huge thanks to our witnesses. Boy, an hour and a half goes by very quickly. Thank you for all your work. Thank you for being here today. As you could tell, this is an area of tremendous interest and importance to our committee and to all Canadians. So thank you for the work that you do. So thanks very much. What I will do right now is I'm going to suspend for as short a time as possible so that the witnesses can leave, and then we can move into camera to discuss committee business.